next edition of Talk on Gentle Warriors, which is hosted by Caregiver Saathi on a fortnightly basis. Caregiver is a new terminology or service which has come into prominence now because of several reasons. One is the number of ailments and diseases which are increasing, requiring extensive care of the patient, or probably the extension of our old age now increasing, where most of the old people are probably living by themselves and need somebody at home to look after them. And of course, even in the pandemic, COVID pandemic, a lot of people needed care at home during the phase they were detected or diagnosed with corona, and even during the recovery period. Now, each of these ailments has got its own issues and problems, and physical, mental, emotional, medical, and some of them are short-term caregiving requirement, and some of them are very extended. And today we have one such caregiver, Dr. Makhija, who has been a caregiver to one ex-naval officer. His name is Commander Gidwani, and she has been part of a caregiver group, and we want her to come and tell her experience, how she managed this, how to look after this gentleman, Commander Gidwani. Before I introduce you to her and say anything more, let Dr. Bela Makhija also speak about herself and about her profession before we start the actual conversation. Good evening, Dr. Bela.
Good evening, Commander Rawat, and good evening, everybody else. Well, I am Dr. Bela Makhija. I'm a practicing obstetrician and gynecologist. I'm heading the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology at Max Hospital, Saket in Delhi. Prior to this, I used to be in Batra Hospital and All India Institute. I'm an alumnus of the Armed Forces Medical College, and I served in the Indian Air Force for 5 years as a short service commissioned officer. And that's what I am. And I was just listening to what you were saying. Yes, you're very right. Caregiving has assumed a much greater role now than ever before. And, you know, caregiving also has different connotations. A caregiver for a short time is an easier job. You know, when you know that this person is going to recover in X number of days or weeks, so it becomes easier. And then, you know, you have caregiving for a longer period of time, but yet still there is some light at the end of the tunnel. You know, somebody's had a stroke. So, you know, all right, with physiotherapy and things like that, this person will have a certain amount of recovery. But the worst and the most difficult type of caregiving is in terminal ailments like motor neuron disease, multiple sclerosis, terminal cancers, where there is no light at the end of the tunnel, where you know the inevitable, and it takes a long period of time, and it's not a short caregiving. So this is a difficult kind of caregiving, and it is not very easy either.
Yeah, I agree with you. You know, I know you have been a caregiver to this gentleman, Commander Gidwani, and I also have been a caregiver to my wife, who was also suffering from motor neuron disease, and passed away last year in October, and how difficult it is. But I'm glad to say one thing, that you do find caregivers in various platforms. I never had a problem getting a caregiver. The only thing is, depending on the type of ailment the patient is suffering, you need to train her for first 2-3 days on some of the medical equipment that you have created in the house, like a mini ICU. Actually, when you talk about a caregiver, by the word itself, you feel it's going to be somebody who's very close to the patient, like the husband or the wife, the sons and daughters, or son-in-law and daughter-in-law, of course, siblings, brothers and sisters, and of course the nurses and the attendants whom you take to take care of the patient. But Dr. Bela, you know, I'm really amazed that you were neither one of them, and you devoted your life, or at least those last 5 years plus of Gidwani, with Gidwani, once you were detected. Amazing. First, tell me, how do you know Commander Gidwani and how did you get associated so closely with this gentleman?
Oh, that's a long story, actually. We have been family, friends, and neighbors since a very long time. We have flats in a society which is a business and professional women's society. And his mother was one of the founder members, and I was one of the last and the junior most members. And so we were very, very fond of each other. Unfortunately, Pushpa Auntie, as I used to call her, she succumbed to ovarian cancer quite early in life, even before she could retire. After that, Commander Gidwani moved into that flat with his family, and his wife used to keep very unwell. So at one point we said, look, you need to get her sorted out. And we got her investigated. That time I was at Batra Hospital. So we got her investigated at Batra Hospital, and we found that she has something called multiple myeloma, which is also a kind of a cancer. So she needed chemotherapy and she needed constant monitoring and constant follow-up and all that. So I actually, initially, I got involved with her treatment. And then they were a rather unfortunate family in the sense that they have a son who would be about 35 years old now, but he is a special child. So one couldn't get any help from him. They have a daughter who is married to a foreign national and she's settled in the US. Commander Gidwani has just one brother, and that brother is also settled in Indonesia. So in effect, there was really hardly anybody left who would take care. So I became a caregiver very gradually and slowly, more out of default than, design. And then I, of course, got a lot of help from his course mates from NDA. They were a very, very solid help.
Oh, that's fantastic. This is what actually human relationship is all about. You'll find very few people who will step out to provide kind of support that you gave to Commander Gidwani, which I'm sure you'll be telling us as we go by. Besides his family and his, the one you've already said, did you also keep some, hire some caregivers, attendants,
Yes.
nurses to look after him 24/7?
Yes.
He needed 24/7.
Yeah. You can't manage these people without. You see, in the last about 1.5 years, when he became totally immobile, that was the time when he needed attendance 24/7.
Oh,
Till the time he was mobile, he had one attendant and that was good enough. But once he became totally immobile, then proper trained paramedics were required because this was a male patient. So you had to have a proper trained male nurse. Okay. So that was
I think that is necessary. I think
that is, you can't manage without it.
You cannot manage without it.
I am a working person, so it was impossible to manage.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Now, I totally agree with you because I too had 2 caregivers, but we will not talk about that. Can you take me through this initial stages? How Commander Gidwani felt that he's got a problem, and how did he approach you, and how did you tackle it initially?
Oh, that's very interesting because Commander Gidwani was a very athletic and very active person. He was a very avid golfer. He used to go off at 4:00 in the morning to tee off with fluorescent balls, and he initially complained that he cannot, turn the key in the car's ignition.
Oh, I see.
So my first reaction was, which normal, sane human being goes 4:00 in the winter mornings to play golf? You go at a more decent time. Haath tumhare garam rahenge, aaram se turn ho jayegi. But, a couple of months down the line, he complained that he was having difficulty in buttoning his shirts. So then I said, no, now this needs a little more attention. So his cousin was a colleague of mine and I knew her well. She was at the All India Institute. And another colleague of ours had become the head of the department of neurology over there. So I just told him, go to your cousin and get checked up over there. So that's when he came back with this card saying, "Ha, unhone mera check kar liya and I have MND." So I was kind of taken aback because he didn't realize the implication of what he was saying. And I did, but I just kept quiet. But that initial stage was very difficult to adjust to. So I took him to, I think, 4 or 5 other leading neurologists in Delhi, thinking that, okay, maybe let's take a second opinion, let's take a third opinion, but nothing changed. The opinion remained the same. So the initial stage was, no, it can't be. Then once we overcame that, then came the next stage when it was all right. Now, what are we going to do about it? So we're going to fight it. So if we are going to have to fight it, how do we go about it? So then we started reading up more about it, and we started finding out where all is the best therapy available and what are the modalities that will help. So then we homed on to physiotherapy, good nutrition, and then, of course, stem cells. And then stem cells again was a very big thing because that's a new and an upcoming branch. So we did a lot of research and we found that in Israel at the Hadassah Medical Center, these guys were getting very good results with their mesenchymal stem cells. So we did try to contact them, but it was next to impossible. But fortunately, that time we had a phenomenally good external affairs minister. And that's where we got help from. She was very helpful. And she was instrumental in arranging for Commander Gidwani to be seen once at Hadassah. But once we reached Hadassah, they had a very, a very nice attitude towards naval people, towards service officers, because in Israeli culture, the army has a lot of importance, the services. So they were very kind, and when they got to know the whole family background, so they said, yes, we will help him and we will give him stem cells. So that's how we were able to get treatment at Hadassah, which normally most people would not be able to get, which is not an easy thing to manage.
Yeah, I think the help of the foreign minister. I assume when she said it was Sushma Swaraj.
Yes, it was Sushma Swaraj, and she was an exceedingly helpful human being. She would help anyone if she could. We're sorry we lost her. She was a wonderful person.
So during this phase, till the time you were going through stem cell therapy, did you feel any emotional or mental changes in Commander Gidwani? How was he taking this setback that was going to happen to him? Did he know exactly how the disease is going to,
Oh, yes. Once he was diagnosed with the disease, he used to read up a lot about it. And he knew exactly what was going to happen. As a matter of fact, initially when he was just not able to climb stairs, he would say, yeah, okay, now I'll have to be dependent on the lift. And then he would have difficulty in walking. So before it really happened, he said, okay, now you have to arrange a walker for me because I will not be able to walk without support. And then while he was in the walker, he would say, okay, now it's time for me to get a wheelchair. So, he could see ahead. He knew exactly what was the next thing that was going to happen because he was an informed person. He read a lot. He read a lot about his disease, and he knew the exact progression of the disease.
Oh, I see. Dr. Bela, you talked about stem cell therapy, and I think probably Commander Gidwani, late Commander Gidwani, would be one of the very few people I know in India who's gone through stem cell therapy. I'm talking about an MND patient.
Yeah.
In our group, of MND caregivers, which is over 200 plus people, everybody talks about stem cell therapy, but nobody has attempted to do it. You were explaining the reason why you went to Israel because of a particular type of stem cell therapy which is being done there and not being done in India. Can you explain us this so that the listeners, Leon, may learn from you?
Yeah. So you see, what they're doing in Israel is that they are taking the bone marrow. After taking out the bone marrow, they are separating the mesenchymal cells. These are the cells that have a potential to develop into neuronal cells. So they culture these cells, so they multiply these cells, and then they inject these mesenchymal cells into the spinal cord, so that the chances of repair of damage is much better. As a matter of fact, they have phenomenally good results in cases of injuries, because injuries, the repair is easier. Now, unfortunately, motor neuron is not an injury, it is a degeneration. So in degeneration also it works, but not as well. And now they have started adding to it a kind of a catalyst, which is called New1. They are doing a study in that also.
Yeah, the trials are on this, yes.
Yeah. So that again is going to enhance the potential of the mesenchymal cells to form the neuronal cells. So this separation of the autologous cells into mesenchymal and just plain autologous, this we are not doing in India. So, and when we initially did take him, the first 2 or 3 injections, he did get a significant amount of relief, in the sense the motor neuron disease people get a lot of fasciculations, fasciculations in the muscles to begin with, fasciculations in the tongue and all the rest of it. So his fasciculations came down quite a bit. But even when we had started the treatment, Professor Korosis, who heads this research, he had told us very categorically that you have to understand that this is not a cure. This will only delay the onset of symptoms, which it did, because Commander Gidwani was able to survive for 7 years after the onset of disease, which is quite a lot.
Yeah, this is a very valuable information you mentioned, because I remember
7 years is a long time.
Because I have gone to this neuro and spine clinic in Bombay, where they do the stem cell therapy, and of course they are very successful with people with spinal injuries.
Yes.
But I couldn't find anything which showed that they've had success with the MND.
Because they are using only the autologous cells. Yeah. They do not have the technology yet to be able to separate the mesenchymal cells and then culture them.
Okay, good. That's good information for us. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure a lot of people who will hear this conversation later. Okay, tell me, besides the normal allopathy medicine and probably maybe physiotherapy at home, and the very important stem cell therapy, did you try and make him undergo any other therapies like Ayurvedic or homeopathic?
We did delve into things like trying to try Ayurvedic treatments and all, but then we were not really convinced. One of the reasons is that they say that MND probably one of the causative agents could be heavy metals, and in Ayurveda they use a lot of heavy metals. So that is why it was basically a no. The only thing that we did was we normal massage with olive oil or virgin coconut oil, that was it. But no intake of any Ayurvedic medicines or any. I somehow was not convinced. We were very, very diligent about his physiotherapy, which we used to get it done twice a day. His respirometer used to do 3 to 4 times in a day. And then we had this, various exercises which we learned at Neurogen. They have a very good physiotherapy department. I would say that's very commendable.
Yes, I've seen that.
Even if the autologous cells are not that useful, but their physiotherapy department is very good. So we picked up a lot of exercises from there. Plus we had a physiotherapist who used to come. and he would make him do the exercises for about an hour in the morning, and the paramedic would get it done in the evening under my supervision. So twice a day. Plus, we were very, very particular about his nutrition, because you see, the muscle wasting happens, and then the patient becomes basically skin and bones. So you have to look after the nutrition very well. And the one thing that they never have a problem with is the autonomic system. So their digestive system does not malfunction. They digest things well.
Yes.
So that is not the thing. It's only the motor neurons that are not functioning. The autonomic are fine. The higher centers are fine. Their thinking is crystal clear. Even to the day that Commander Gidwani died, I think 2 hours before he died, he sent me a message, how to do this, how to do that, do this, go to the bank, do that, go to the bank, do this. Very clear.
Yeah.
Because it's only the motor neurons that are suffering, nothing else.
I remember
and the other thing we were very particular about was to make sure that he didn't get any infection, and B, didn't get any bed sores.
Yeah, I remember you said one thing, that every evening you made sure that he got out of the bed,
Yes.
he was put on the wheelchair, not moved around in the house, but taken out of the house within the society and back to bed. I think that was a very, very positive step.
No, not only that, before the lockdowns came, at least twice in a month, we would go to the Kota House mess. We would sit outside in the lawns.
Oh, I see.
He would interact with people, because he was using this, gadget that Stephen Hawking used. Yes. He was using that, and with that he could communicate and talk.
Oh, very nice.
So he was, and I would take him to a hotel for a meal, because I wanted him to not go into a depression. Because if you're just cooped up in the house and you cannot go anywhere, that itself is depressing. So I would say, okay, come on, now we're going today. And we would go.
Very nice.
So we used to do that.
Yeah.
But
honestly,
the lockdown did us in a lot, because then our activity was totally restricted. Even his medication, all his injections, his IV drips, everything. I used to give it to him at home, because there was no question of bringing him to the hospital. He would be exposed to COVID unnecessarily. So that was one thing.
Fantastic.
But he never got a single bed sore, not a single bed sore, and no infection.
I think this was total involvement of you, Dr. Bela, and I'm sure you took very good charge and you gave very good advice to the attendants and the male nurse who was there attending him, to make sure that Commander Gidwani does all the activities. I mean, it is difficult, because if the patient
I had 2 very good friends helping me, Arvind and Saddev. So there were times when I wouldn't get enough leave from work. So I think twice or thrice, Commodore Arvind Shigon, he took Commander Gidwani to Israel. And then General Saddev Bajaj, he came with us, because time came when I realized that I cannot handle the entire journey and, the clearance at the airports and everything with a wheelchair and a walker and this and that. I couldn't handle it physically alone, because you would have to go to so many different counters for different things. So then General Bajaj was with us. So I had a hell of a lot of support from his course mates.
Okay, tell me, as a caregiver, how much of the mental and physical and emotional stress that you went through, and I would say even his family went through, because although they were not the primary caregivers, but they were there around him.
Yeah.
But what kind of stresses and emotional, physical, mental stress do you think they went through?
See, for me, the emotional stress was probably not all that much, because I'm a professional.
Yes.
So that helped one hell of a lot. But yes, initially the family was involved, but as the disease progressed, the circumstances of the family being what they were, they kind of had no option but to give up. And they did give up. but I think that's only natural because the wife was not well. The son is a special child. There was nobody else at home. They, had very little support. So it was basically Dr. Saddev Bajaj and Arvind. They were the biggest supports that way.
It just takes my mind back to the way I went through the caregiving for my wife, it's very
actually
tough.
towards the end it became difficult.
Yes.
Because when I could make out that now the respirometer, the balls are just not going up, and his expiratory efforts were also very minimal, I could foresee that the end is near.
I want to ask you one question. Sorry.
Yeah.
I want to ask you this question. I know I'm waiting to ask you this question because there's something very rare and it's very difficult for a caregiver, especially if you're a husband or a daughter or a son. Commander Gidwan, you mentioned, had written a living will.
Yes.
That he does not want to go and be put on a ventilator and unnecessarily extend miseries and pain not only to himself but to people who are helping him. Can you take us through that a little bit?
Yeah, so you see, he was an intelligent and a very informed person. He had read up everything about the disease. He knew that, okay, these are the options. I can have this, I can have that. And then at the end of it, when he realized that nothing really helps, and in the end, you have to give up. So he realized that, look, instead of going through all these interventions on my body, I would rather go with dignity and go peacefully. So he called in his lawyer and he said, because you see, the mental faculties never suffer, they never change. So yes. He made what is a living will, and he wrote that, look, I do not wish to be resuscitated. I do not wish to have any intervention on my body in the form of a tracheostomy or a ventilator or even a feeding, peg. He says, I don't want any of that. And then he made copies of that and he gave it to all his next of kin and to his friends, his doctor and his lawyer, to make sure that, when things get bad and somebody says, bhag ke ye karo, let us do this. So he says, no, none of that. I know I have to go. When I have to go with my dignity. I don't want intervention. So that's what happened. I mean, he went very peacefully. He woke up in the morning, he had his bath, was given a shave and everything. And the servants told him, okay, come eat your, breakfast now. So he says, no, I'm just feeling sleepy. I will first sleep for a while and then have breakfast. And he went and lay down and he slept and he never woke up.
Oh my God.
So, I mean, if you really ask me, I think that is the kind of a deliverance that I wanted for him. I didn't want him to be struggling for breath and all the rest of it. I think he went the way he wanted to go. And that was the best thing that could have happened for him.
Oh, this was a tough decision. I know during this phase, there was one army colonel, again in Delhi, who had also given, made his intention clear that I don't want to be put on a ventilator. I don't want any surgery, nothing.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, because of circumstances, his wife made him do it. But with the ventilator, he didn't last too long. But it's a very tough decision, not only for the patient, but even for the family.
No, but the problem that we have with ventilatory support in India is that you cannot voluntarily withdraw it.
Yes, you can't. Once you put it,
you cannot voluntarily withdraw it. You can put a man on the ventilator, but you cannot take him off the ventilator.
You cannot take him off. Yes.
So that he was aware of that. He had discussed all that with his doctor, Dr. Diwan. And Dr. Diwan said that no, even if the family members agree that Dr. Sahab ventilator hata do, I cannot do it.
Yeah.
My law does not permit me to withdraw the support of the ventilator. So then if you're on the ventilator, then you have to last out whatever time that you need to last out. And that's when he decided that, no, I don't want to do that. And he made very sure because, he told everybody in the family, his brother, his daughter, his wife, all his friends, we all knew that he was categorically against any kind of intervention, and we respected it. Because there are times when you should respect the wishes of the patient. We've learned that all our lives in our medical career. There are times when we do respect the patient's wishes. I think they have to be respected.
This is a very controversial subject, and I've had discussion on this with many of the caregivers. It's very difficult for a person to say that I won't put my beloved one on a ventilator. It's very difficult, and
it is a tough decision. But you see, once the decision has been taken by the patient,
that has to be respected.
Then it has to be respected. And here, you see, he made things easy for everybody because he took that decision and he says, okay, this is what I want and this is what it shall be. So everyone already knew that, okay, these things we don't have to do. This is his wish and this should be respected. That's what made, his going so peaceful and so dignified.
So how did you manage your time from your house to your hospital and to him on a daily basis, or was it once in a while, or were you always in touch on the phone?
Yeah, no, you see, I have the flat that I have in Kaveri, though I'm not living over there, but it's a fully maintained flat and I do visit Kaveri once in a day. So it was not all that difficult for me. And after work, I would go and look him up and see that his physiotherapy was done. Fortunately, now I'm senior enough to, not have to run all the time. I do have to run sometimes. Yeah. Like I am having to run after this thing for an ectopic pregnancy, but that's not so tough now because I have lots of people to help me now. So I used to go and look on him every day. And of course, I would make sure about his medication. He needed his drips to be given fortnightly. He needed his injections, the testosterone and other injections. So those I would administer myself. And other than that, I used to make sure, okay, what did he eat today? Did he have a proper nutrition? Because you see, what happens is that when you have difficulty in swallowing, people tend to give more liquids and liquids which have very little fiber.
Yeah.
So then patients will tend to get constipated. So that is not the idea. The idea was to let him have the fiber also, so that there wouldn't be a problem with his bowel movement, which never was, because we pulverized everything with the fiber. And sometimes you had to cajole him. Oh, you have to eat it. It was almost like, wo kawa aaya, wo chidiya aayi, kha lo, that kind of a story. But when you have to do it, you have to do it. So
like I should do with my children, I remember.
Yeah.
When we should make them eat.
Yeah, sometimes we would have to, and sometimes, these people used to, Saddev and Arvind had named me CSM, Company Sergeant Major.
Okay.
Because like I would say, no, nothing doing.
Yeah.
You have to finish this. I'm not moving from here. Ye to khatam karna hi hai. And then I would say, no, this has to be done. It has to be done. So sometimes you have to be a little firm because, actually, if you look at it even from the patient's point of view, you get pretty sick of, doing the same thing over and over and over again. And then you say, okay, enough. Now I don't want to do any more. I'm sure if any one of us is in that position, we would do the same. That's when, you need that extra push.
How did you manage to relieve yourself, when you're out of that situation back home to, de-stress yourself?
Oh, I have a wonderful dog.
Oh, lovely.
And I do a lot of embroidery.
Oh, yes, I've seen those.
Because see now, at my age, when the family is more or less settled, you have either your profession or, you have some hobbies.
Yeah.
So it's very important for a caregiver to have hobbies because that de-stresses.
Yeah.
And a pet definitely de-stresses a lot.
Okay, Dr. Bela, thank you so much. I mean, so much to learn from you.
No,
not just
I
your.
just want to give one take-home message to all the caregivers.
Yes, that's
And
very important.
the take-home message is very simple. It is that when you're a caregiver, you have to have acceptance of the outcome of the disease which your person who you're giving care to is suffering. That acceptance is often not easy, but you have to first have acceptance that, all right, this is how it is going to be. And after that, you have to have an aim that, all right, when things become like this, these are the things that I'm going to do. And this is how I'm going to do. And the third and the most important thing is, please ask for help. Get all the help that you can. Don't think you can do everything on your own, because you simply cannot do it. You have to have help. So please never hesitate. Never hesitate to ask for help. Caregiving is a tough job and no one can do it alone. You have to have a backup. You have to have help. I was very fortunate that I had two of his best friends who were always there. I could talk to them. They were there when we needed them. It was a big blessing.
I totally agree with you. I learned it the hard way of, asking for help. I was being prodded by my daughter, my son, her brother and sister, that, what are you doing? Why are you doing this alone? Get a help. I said, no, I can't have another person in my house. And till the time she fell down and broke her spine, then I said, I do need a help. And then slowly, of course, Dr. Bela, it was amazing talking to you. I mean, you're not one of the, it wasn't one of the usual caregivers, emotional, attached, everything. But of course, you were all part of that. But you were not one of his family members, but you were a great friend. I mean, how many people would have a friend like you? Kehte na, sukh mein sab saathi, dukh mein na koi ho. I think you proved everybody wrong.
I think certain things are just destined.
Yeah.
I think this was destined that I should be doing it. I never set out to do it. I just, got drawn into it gradually and slowly. And then I said, okay, karna hai, to karna hai. What is there to think about it? Let's do it. And that's it.
So let me again thank you very much for sparing your valuable time. I don't know, like you just said, you got something else happening as soon as this call is over. And we're ever so grateful that you spared your time.
Not at all. It's been a pleasure. It's been
experience. And I hope a lot of people who will listen to it and gain from what you have told. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.